President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has officially secured the APC presidential ticket for the 2027 election, and the numbers are staggering: more than 10.9 million votes. A near unanimous victory. A result so overwhelming that many political observers are already calling it one of the strongest internal mandates ever recorded by a ruling party in Nigeria. But the real story is not that Tinubu won. Most people expected him to win. The real story is what happened after the victory was announced. Because standing before party members, government officials, supporters and political allies, Tinubu delivered a speech that may have revealed exactly how he plans to approach the next phase of his political journey. And for millions of Nigerians still struggling with rising prices, economic pressure and security concerns, one question remains. Will the promises translate into results before voters return to the polls in 2027? Today, we are breaking down the victory, the speech, the promises, the challenges, and the political battle that may already be taking shape behind the scenes. And some of the details may surprise you. The atmosphere surrounding the APC presidential primary was unlike anything seen within the party in recent years. Across Nigeria's 774 local government areas and 8,809 wards, APC members participated in a nationwide direct primary process. Party leaders described the exercise as a demonstration of grassroots democracy. Supporters viewed it as proof that the ruling party remains highly organized ahead of the next general election. When the votes were finally counted, the outcome was decisive. Tinubu received more than 10.9 million votes. His only challenger, Stanley Osifo, secured just over 16,000 votes. The margin was extraordinary. Supporters erupted in celebration. Party officials applauded what they called overwhelming confidence in the president's leadership. And within hours, headlines across the country focused on the scale of the victory. But political victories create something that can be both powerful and dangerous: expectations. The larger the victory, the greater the expectations. And the greater the expectations, the harder it becomes to satisfy them. For President Tinubu, this nomination is more than a ticket to contest another election. It is a public endorsement of the policies his administration has pursued since taking office in 2023. Policies that have sparked intense debate across Nigeria. Supporters argue those decisions were necessary. Critics argue ordinary citizens have paid a heavy price. And that disagreement is unlikely to disappear anytime soon. To understand why this nomination matters so much, we need to go back to the beginning of Tinubu's presidency. When he assumed office, Nigeria faced significant economic challenges. Government finances were under pressure. Foreign exchange distortions had created uncertainty. Fuel subsidies consumed enormous public resources. Investors frequently expressed concerns about structural weaknesses within the economy. Within days of entering office, Tinubu made one of the most controversial decisions of his administration: the removal of fuel subsidies. For years, successive governments had discussed the issue. Many acknowledged the subsidy system was expensive and difficult to sustain. Yet few were willing to remove it completely because of the immediate impact on citizens. Tinubu moved quickly. Supporters described the decision as courageous. Critics described it as painful. And for many Nigerians, the consequences were impossible to ignore. Transportation costs increased. Food prices rose. Businesses faced higher operating expenses. Families adjusted household budgets. The economic conversation changed almost overnight. Soon afterward came another major reform. The administration moved toward a more market-driven exchange rate system. Again, supporters argued that the change would improve transparency and attract investment. Again, critics warned of short-term hardship. The result was a period of significant adjustment throughout the economy. And ever since those reforms were introduced, one question has dominated public discussion. Was the pain worth it? That question continues to shape political conversations today, which is why Tinubu's acceptance speech attracted so much attention. Many Nigerians were not simply interested in hearing a victory address. They wanted answers. They wanted reassurance. They wanted to know whether the sacrifices of recent years would eventually produce meaningful improvements in daily life. And the president appeared determined to address exactly that concern. During his speech, Tinubu defended the reforms implemented under his administration. He acknowledged that difficult decisions had created hardship. But he argued that those measures were laying the foundation for long-term stability and growth. According to the president, Nigeria could no longer postpone critical economic adjustments. The challenges, he suggested, were the price of rebuilding a stronger economic system. For supporters, the message was clear. Stay the course. Trust the process. Believe the reforms will deliver results. But not everyone is convinced. And that may become one of the defining political battles between now and the 2027 election. Because there is a major difference between what economists call macroeconomic progress and what ordinary citizens experience every day. Government officials can point to foreign reserve growth. They can point to improvements in fiscal discipline. They can point to investment commitments and currency stabilization efforts. But many Nigerians judge the economy differently. They judge it when they buy food. They judge it when they pay transportation fares. They judge it when they pay school fees. They judge it when they visit the market. And that reality creates a challenge that no government can ignore. A strong economic report means little if citizens still feel overwhelmed by rising living costs. This is why President Tinubu spent a significant portion of his speech trying to connect policy decisions with future outcomes. The message was simple. The hardship was not the destination. It was part of a transition. According to the president, the objective was to create a stronger foundation capable of supporting long-term economic growth. Supporters believe that foundation is already beginning to take shape. Critics argue that the benefits remain too distant for many struggling households. And somewhere between those two positions lies the political battlefield of 2027. Because elections are rarely decided by statistics alone. They are decided by perception. And perception is often shaped by personal experience. If citizens begin to feel meaningful improvements in their everyday lives, the administration's arguments become stronger. If economic pressure remains high, opposition parties will likely use that frustration as a central campaign message. This is where the story becomes even more interesting. Because the economy was only one part of Tinubu's acceptance speech. The president also focused heavily on infrastructure, and one sector received particular attention: electricity. For decades, a reliable power supply has remained one of Nigeria's most difficult challenges. Governments have come and gone, policies have changed, projects have been launched, promises have been made, yet millions of Nigerians continue to depend on generators as an alternative source of power. Businesses spend enormous amounts maintaining private electricity systems. Manufacturers face additional operating expenses. Small businesses struggle with unpredictable energy costs. Families adjust daily routines around power availability. The consequences affect productivity, investment, and economic growth, which is why electricity remains one of the most politically sensitive issues in the country. During his speech, Tinubu highlighted what he described as progress within the sector. According to the administration, power generation recently reached levels significantly higher than those recorded when the government took office. The president also referenced the ongoing metering initiative designed to reduce estimated billing and improve transparency within the electricity market. Supporters argue these developments represent meaningful progress. They believe improvements in power supply could unlock new opportunities for businesses and households across the country. But there is an important political reality. Nigerians have heard promises about electricity for decades. Many citizens remain skeptical until they see consistent improvements in their homes and businesses. And skepticism is powerful. Because once trust is damaged, governments must work twice as hard to convince the public that change is actually occurring. This means expectations surrounding electricity remain extremely high, perhaps even higher than many officials realize. And if visible improvements continue, the administration gains a valuable political advantage. If progress stalls, critics will quickly point to unfulfilled expectations. That is the reality of governing in a democracy. Every promise eventually becomes a measurement. Every commitment eventually faces public evaluation. And every announcement creates future expectations. And nowhere is that more visible than in education. For millions of young Nigerians, education represents more than a classroom. It represents opportunity. It represents social mobility. It represents the possibility of building a different future. Yet gaining access to higher education is often easier than paying for it. Many families face difficult financial choices: tuition fees, accommodation, books, transportation, feeding expenses. The costs add up quickly. And for countless students, financial pressure becomes one of the biggest obstacles standing between ambition and achievement. This is why Tinubu dedicated part of his acceptance speech to discussing educational support programs introduced during his administration. Particular attention was given to the student loan initiative. According to government figures, billions of naira have already been disbursed to support students across the country. Supporters describe the program as one of the most significant educational interventions in recent years. The argument is straightforward. A nation cannot develop without investing in its people. And people cannot reach their potential if education remains financially inaccessible. The logic is difficult to dispute. Countries that consistently invest in human capital often create stronger economies over time. A better educated workforce can drive innovation, improve productivity, increase competitiveness, and attract investment. But once again, implementation becomes everything. Because policies do not succeed simply because they sound good. They succeed when citizens can access them effectively, when processes work smoothly, when promises become reality, and when intended beneficiaries genuinely experience the expected benefits. This is where public opinion often becomes divided. Supporters focus on the scale of the intervention. Critics focus on the challenges that may still exist. And both sides attempt to shape the national conversation. That pattern repeats itself across nearly every major government initiative. Which brings us to another issue that may matter even more to voters than economics or education: security. No matter how strong economic statistics appear, citizens ultimately want to feel safe. Parents want their children protected. Farmers want access to their land. Businesses want stable operating environments. Communities want peace. Without security, development becomes far more difficult. Investment slows. Agricultural output suffers. Commercial activity becomes riskier, and public confidence declines. This reality has forced successive administrations to place security at the center of national policy discussions. Tinubu's government is no exception. Throughout his speech, the president emphasized the importance of strengthening security operations across the country. He reiterated support for the armed forces. He highlighted collaboration with law enforcement agencies, and he stressed the importance of community participation in addressing local security challenges. The administration's position is clear: security remains a top priority, but security presents a unique political challenge. Unlike infrastructure projects, which can be photographed and displayed, unlike roads, bridges, or buildings that people can physically see, security success is often measured by absence: the absence of attacks, the absence of violence, the absence of fear. And politically, that can be difficult to communicate. Citizens naturally remember incidents that occur. They rarely celebrate incidents that were prevented. As a result, governments face constant pressure to demonstrate visible progress. Every major security incident attracts public attention. Every improvement is carefully scrutinized. Every setback becomes political ammunition. Opposition parties understand this dynamic very well, and they will almost certainly use security outcomes as a major campaign issue heading into 2027, because elections are contests of narrative. Each side tries to define reality before voters make their decision. The ruling party highlights achievements. The opposition highlights shortcomings. Both sides present evidence. Both sides make promises. Both sides attempt to convince citizens that their vision offers the better path forward. And that process is already beginning, even though the general election remains months away. Because once a presidential nomination is secured, the conversation changes. The focus shifts from internal party competition to national competition. The real contest begins, and the stakes become significantly higher. The APC has now made its choice. The question is whether the broader electorate will eventually make the same choice. That answer remains unknown. But what happens over the coming months could shape the outcome more than anything that has happened so far. Because political momentum is valuable, but maintaining momentum is often much harder than